Hey everybody, it's the 3D printing professor, and my behind the scenes stuff is just going bonkers right now. There's a lot of things that I'm trying to do to make my videos look and sound better for you, some of which I'm experimenting with in this video. Plus, my videos are getting considerably more ambitious, so I'm not getting my schedule done nearly as much as I would like to, meaning yeah, if I don't do something small and quick and simple this week, you guys aren't getting a video, and I love you guys, and I don't want you to miss out, so let's get a video out this week. And this week, just to keep things simple, I'm going on the website Quora, or Quora? You know, this website is a website where people can ask questions, and I wonder if the question, how do you pronounce Quora, has already been asked. It probably has, but I don't want to look it up, because I might be disappointed if it hasn't been asked, and I might be disappointed with the answer. Still, Quora. And it has a section for 3D printing questions. So people go on there, they ask 3D printing questions, and today I'm going to go answer some of those. So let's go check that out. The first question is, where can a 3D printer be used? You know, we've got a 3D printer on the International Space Station. I think that a 3D printer can be used just about anywhere. We've pretty much proven that. 3D printers are almost going ahead of us into space, and that's super, super cool. Now, though, if we take it back the other direction on the micro level, do you want to use a 3D printer in your house? Do you want to make sure it's in the shed? You know, really, mostly they're safe enough to use anywhere. The emissions from ABS fumes you probably don't want to have in the house, so if you're going to be printing with a toxic material like ABS, you want that outside in the garage or in a well-ventilated area. But PLA is relatively safe. Some people are a little bit concerned about it, and if you are, then again, put it outside. But for me, as long as your room is large, well ventilated, you have a window nearby that you can open, I say go for it. Use it indoors. Just don't. I'll tell you where you can't use a 3D printer. Do not use a 3D printer in a small closet in the back room of your parents' magic shop on top of a stack of flash paper. That is a recipe for disaster. That is a recipe for the one terrible disaster that 3D printing has had. So don't do that. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, 3D printers can be used everywhere. How cool is that? Can you own a kangaroo in Utah? What? Oh, Quora asked questions that are relative to your region. So I live in Utah, so people are asking about kangaroos in Utah. I don't know the answer to this question. Let's see. Let's look at some of the answers. Yes, you can own a kangaroo in Utah, but you're required to keep a Book of Mormon in the kangaroo pouch. Funny. Is there such a thing as wood 3D printer filament? Yes, kind of. It's called Woodfill, and I have a tile up here for one of my supporters actually printed in cork fill. Now, I don't know, the Woodfill stuff is a little bit voodoo because it's supposed to be a fill material, which means that it's got PLA with the fill material in there, and they're not supposed to blend together. But this Woodfill feels like it blends together a little bit better. The final result feels less like wood and more like paper mache. If you do it with a high infill, it feels a little bit better, but it's lighter weight than you would expect wood to be, so it just doesn't feel real. But it smells great while it's printing. I'll give it that. Next question. What 3D printer filament best imitates rubber with a Shore A hardness of 50 to 60? You know, I think that if you were to draw a Venn diagram with one circle for people who know 3D printing and one circle for people for whom the statement Shore A hardness of 50 to 60 actually means something, and you'd have to find a better label for that because that's a terrible label, but that Venn diagram would have a very tiny overlap in the middle, and I am not in that overlap. But you know who probably is in that overlap? The Ninja Flex guys. There's a company out there called Ninja Flex. They make flexible filament. If anybody knows that the answer to that question, go talk to the Ninja Flex people. I'm sure that they would know. Are 3D printed coins counterfeit money? Wow. I mean, right? Yes, right? Because counterfeit means that it's fake and you're not making it the right way. But by that definition, monopoly is counterfeit money, but nobody would ever accept that as fake money. Although this does give me an idea. Like, what if I were to take, I think that you'd need to do this with an SLA printer. I don't think that you could get away with it with FDM. But what would it take to make a fake coin and finish it up, maybe spray it with some silver Krylon or something, make it look good, and try to pass that off as a real coin. And of course, go back afterwards and say, "Hey, listen, this wasn't real. It was a gag for the internet." But that's put that on the list of ideas I have for future videos, man. That's that's weird. How has 3D printing so far revolutionized different sectors of industry? Now, I don't know what different sectors of industry mean. And if you're looking for a comprehensive answer to this question, I'm not that guy. But I have worked at companies that have used 3D printing in their processes, and it has definitely changed the way that they work. And if you'd like to read the whole story about this, go to 3dpprofessor.com and in the search bar, search for the if you give an engineer a toy post and read about that. That's all about my experiences working in a company that got a 3D printer and how in a very short time it completely flipped the script on the engineers. To the TLDR of that is when you give an engineer a tool that cuts out the human that has to follow their designs to make a thing real. Because in the past, that's the way it worked. The engineer made the designs. They handed that off to a skilled worker who then made those real and then sent them back to them. When you get rid of that and it's just done by a machine, the engineer feels like that's their thing, like they made it, even though it was the machine that made it. I don't know, it's some weird psychological effect, but it creates a sense of ownership, and they start doing things that they would have never considered before. So check that post out if you want to know more. Are 3D printed dog toys safe for pets? Okay, let's back that up a little bit. Are 3D printed human toys safe for humans, right? I mean, generally speaking, yes, people are making toys out of 3D printing all the time, but if it's small enough that a child would swallow it, there's no label on there or on the STL or on anything that says, for ages 12 and up or anything. There's no regulatory committee making sure that your 3D printers are regulated, and I don't think that there should be, but that does present a problem in who's responsible for the safety of a 3D printed object, right? So are 3D printed toys safe for humans? Yes, but there's nobody making sure that the right toys are getting to the right people. I've seen people make 3D printed rattles for their babies, and they're big and bulky, and they put stuff in there while it's printing, and it rattles, and it looks like a sword, and it was a real cool project. I thought it was really neat. And there are people who would say that the lines in a 3D printed print allowed bacteria to grow, and therefore, it's unsanitary. But I haven't seen that. I tried testing it, and I failed, but it was entirely my fault. I'm not sure that that's any more true on a 3D printed object than any other object. So in answer to the question, are 3D printed dog toys safe for pets? They can be, and I guess that's entirely up to you, but there's nobody assuring that they are, so that assurance, that guarantee is entirely in your hands. What advice can you offer for someone who is interested in becoming a 3D printer? Well, the alchemic restructuring of a human body into a metallic machine parts is far beyond current science. So I would say start by studying alchemy. But if you mean you want to get into 3D printing, I've got a whole book about that. The Beginner's Guide to the 3D Printing Galaxy is a great place to start. It gives you the knowledge base that you need, and it'll save you a bunch of the mistakes that you make. It even goes through how to choose your first 3D printer. My recommendation is still the Monoprice Select Mini V2, but I don't know. Well, I may have a new recommendation because I'm playing with the Pixel right now, or the voxel, the monoprice voxel. There are some other 3D printers out there that I'm really impressed with. So yeah, read my book, I guess, is a suggestion for that one. How do I update printer driver? And this is in 3D printing, so I assume you're talking about updating the driver for your 3D printer. And the answer is you don't. Well, not yet. Most 3D printers don't actually have a driver on the computer that drives to them. They are actually running on their own. Now you can update the firmware on there, and that's different for each machine, and some 3D printers don't have a firmware, but a lot of the open source ones do. They don't have a firmware that you can update. It's different for each printer, so there's no one answer for this one. But right now there's no driver for a 3D printer on your computer driving your 3D printer, so you don't update the driver. That's just not a thing. But you can update the firmware on your 3D printer, and you should keep that up to date. Especially go see my ANA A8 video. I'll put a card up so that you guys can go to that to see why you want to keep those up to date. How can you make anime figures at home? Oh, this is a good one. I actually, I've been wanting to do this for a while. Not because I'm big into anime. But a little while ago, I discovered that it would be really easy to take, what's the vocoder, the vocal program that people have. There's a character on there. If you know what I'm talking about, you're yelling at me right now and saying, come on, this character, everybody knows her, and I know her, but I don't remember her name. It's really easy to take her model, import it into Blender, and then pose it and export it as an STL. I've been wanting to do this project, although it will print with a lot of supports, and so there's a whole aspect of cleaning off the supports. And you'd have to print her fairly big because she prints with very thin legs and stuff, and so you'd have to scale her up to get the tolerances right, or else you'd have to thicken her. But it could be done. It could totally be done. You just design it in Blender. I do have a video series about designing a model in Blender, and I'm holding off on doing any new Blender tutorials, but maybe I'll do this in the future when Blender 2.8 comes out, because I feel like Blender 2.8 is right around the corner, and if I make a video now teaching people how to do things, it'll be outdated the moment Blender 2.8 comes out. So maybe I will do how to make an anime character in Blender as a tutorial in the future. That would be neat. That would be fun. Will the automotive industry replace workers with 3D printing? Just as soon as they can. If we can find a machine to do a human's job, we will have the machine do the human's job, and then the human will take over the job of maintaining the machine, but we'll have fewer humans maintaining all the machines. That's just industry. That's the way things will work. Now, are we going to do that right now? Probably not, especially since 3D printing is such a slow process. I mean, the automotive industry is already using tons of robots to do the process of making a car. If they could do it with 3D printing, they would, but 3D printing is slow. It starts from nothing and it builds it up. They're not taking a sheet of metal and boom, stamping out the shape that they want. You'd have to build it up layer by layer. So I think that there's a lot that has to happen between now and that reality where we have to worry about that. So if you're working in the automotive industry, don't worry, 3D printing is not a threat yet. One day maybe, but it's probably going to be your children or your grandchildren who will have to worry about that. What is the future of 3D printing? I mean, I can speculate. 3D printers will get cheaper, they'll get faster, they'll use better materials, and maybe we'll come up with a new 3D printing process that is not FDM so that we can make this all happen, because it's possible that we've maxed out FDM, that we can't possibly make this go any faster or better. Maybe we'll add more heads, maybe we can't, maybe we just can't make it go any faster, and it's time that we develop a new technology. There's so much possibility that people like to get caught up in that speculation, and I like to get caught up in that speculation too, but mostly I like to look at where we are and look at the here and now and say, yeah, okay, the future is bright and it's got some cool possibilities, but what can we do now with this technology that we got? That's what I'm excited for. Can you build a 3D printer at home from scratch? Yes, look up reprap.org for instructions. They're all there. Super cool. How can I build a metal 3D printer at home? I'm an electronics engineer interested in building my own metal 3D printer. Interesting. There are metal 3D printers out there, and there are a couple of different ways that they function. Some of them use metal powder and lay it down, and then use a super high-powered laser to melt that layer to itself into the previous layer, and then it lays down more metal power. There are some that basically do a long-term welding project and use like an FDM process, and those ones run into problems with accuracy, and so I've heard that there's somebody going back after it with a mill on each layer to clean up the edges, which I think is super cool. But there's not a lot there's no rep wrap for metal 3D printers yet, so you're going to be on your own figuring that out. But hey, isn't that fun? Go for it. How can I make money with a 3D printer? You know, I made a video a little while ago talking about how I made money with 3D printing. Angus recently put out a video talking about, well, he was making it sound like how you can make money with 3D printing, but he was talking about how he made money with 3D printing years ago. I'm not sure that the idea and the techniques that he puts out there totally will work nowadays, although a lot of what he says is right on point. Build your brand, get your hustle on, and get yourself out there are big things. Like, you have to treat it like a business. You can't just, oh, I've got a 3D printer. Well, make me money, Mr. 3D printer. It's not going to do it. You have to do what a business does. You have to find your audience. You have to, get yourself out to that audience. And you probably have to solve a problem that somebody has. So be on the lookout for problems that could be solved with a 3D printed part, and you're part of the way there. There's a great book that I'm reading right now called Disrupt You. Yes, that's what it's called, Disrupt You. It talks about a technique of reprogramming your brain so that you're looking for these opportunities. And I hope to have a future video where I talk about that specifically. But it's not going to be easy. It's basically going to be a business that 3D printing just happens to be the facilitator for, but it's not necessarily going to be the only way you get the job done. What are some careers where I use 3D software to make new products? Lots. Just about any industry. It's called being an entrepreneur, I guess is what it's called. It's called coming up with a new idea and making it happen. And there are companies and there are businesses that are always doing that, and they're using 3D software. And so getting to know CAD, getting to know SolidWorks, getting to know, and even if you can't afford SolidWorks, because a lot of people can't afford SolidWorks, starting with Fusion 360 right now and getting good at doing industrial type designs with that will give you a good lead in to Fusion or to SolidWorks and the professional tools later. And those professional tools, I question how much value those tools have nowadays in light of the incredible free software that we have out there, but they're still, the paid software is still out there. It's still a thing, so you can't discount it yet. So get to know it. How can 3D printing be regulated? Whoa. Did a storm cloud just come overhead? Holy smokes, this just got heavy. There is no good way that I can see that 3D printing can be regulated. The only way that we can regulate 3D printing is we welcome Big Brother with open arms. And it's not going to be pretty. We either have to have a cloud-based machine attached to our 3D printers, like it will be illegal to run your 3D printers without this machine, so that the government can take a look at what you're printing and be sure that you're not printing any naughty things. And I mean, it's not just going to be, obviously the one that people think about is guns. We got to regulate guns and make sure that guns can't be 3D printed. But that the moment we have a machine on our 3D printing, snooping at anything that we're printing, Disney's going to come in and go, that looks an awful lot like a stormtrooper, that flowlistic, low poly space warrior, whatever he's calling it now, because he can't call it a stormtrooper, and they're going to shut you down if you try to print that. Or McMaster Carr is going to be like, oh, hey, that useful print that you're looks an awful lot like something that we're going to print. Pay us for that. You know, I don't like this question because I don't like the answer. The answer means that we are going to that 3D printing is going to be regulated, and that's, in my opinion, a very bad thing and not worth any cost. At least not worth any cost right now. Now, if we get to the point in the future where it is actually possible to 3D print a gun that actually works right off the build plate with no effort. We're not living in that reality right now, and we're a long way from that reality. But if we ever get there, I feel like by the time that we get there, the technology is going to be progressed and matured enough that we're probably already going to have it be cloud-based, and so that sort of regulation is going to be already there, quite frankly. So my answer to this is we can't, we shouldn't. That is the problem for the future to answer. Let's not be solving the future's problems for them right now. What caused the 3D printing fad to die, and what will it take for 3D printing to reach the consumer mass market? What caused the fad to die? Reality set in. I mean, 3D printing is cool and it's got a lot of possibilities, and we look forward to the future and we go, ooh, look at what this could do. And that's true. It can totally do some amazing things. But it's slow, and it's a process that takes time and it takes effort to design, and it's just not there. It still can do amazing things, but it's not push button and zoom, we get Christmas. It's push button and 15 hours later you got a failed print and you got to try again. Reality set in. But that's not to say that 3D printing isn't any less amazing now than it was before. It's still fantastic, and I absolutely love it, and I absolutely recommend you get into it. So that's it for this Quora question and answer session for 3D printing. There are still tons of 3D printing questions and more coming in all the way. So if you guys like this video, I may do it again in the future. But hey, in the meanwhile, I've got the first 3D printed ornament for the Children's Hospital project already come in from Bruce Brown. Thank you guys very much. Take a look at this beautiful ornament. I absolutely love it. It's a little nativity scene, and he explains on his little tag that he made for it: nativity free clip art converted to a printable 3D model by Bruce Brown. So it's an original that he made. Look at this thing. It's gorgeous. Absolutely love it, Bruce. Huge fan. That one's definitely going on the tree. And guys, if you haven't already made your ornament and sent it in to me, we don't have a whole lot of time, guys. We are in October. We got to get these finished by the end of the month, so I hope to see a whole flood of these ornaments coming in soon. So be sure to get those sent in. And as always, I want to thank you very much for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon and direct supporters. And as always, safety first. I'll see you next time. I'll be back.